I mean, these are characters that we've seen since the birth of cinema. So there's a sort of familiar touchstone, and yet each time we come back to them, it's something new, it's something exciting, it's a challenge for each filmmaker that comes to these movies. Like, how do we make this fresh? How do we make this bigger, more exciting? And as the technology advances and the scale of our cinemas get bigger and bigger, you know, we seek to kind of fill that. So I think that's what keeps audiences coming back, is like, how is this familiar character that we've known for almost 100 years, what are they up to now?
I could listen to you say the word cinema every day.
Cinema.
Oh, God. I think that's true. I think it's absolutely true. They're staples, right? Like, they're staples. I recently went to Japan, and I couldn't believe how herald these characters still are. Like, but they're also promoting cheeseburgers and stuff. I was like, that's Godzilla with a cheeseburger. Like, there'd be Godzilla hats, and like, I think for me, because I mean, if you travel the world, you realize that they have such a global reach, that they belong to everyone, and that people really love. It's like a language within itself, like that it brings people together. So I think that that's a big reason why people keep going and keep wanting them to be made, because it is a connecting fiber between people around the world, honestly.
Yeah, they're beloved and they're literally larger than life, which is cinema itself.
Yeah. Panic, fear, codependency.
Well, Dr. Andrews technically brings them together, is because now in this movie, Dr. Andrews is now the sort of, you know, boss of Monarch and boss of the Titans, and how to control and deal with them and interface with humans kind of thing. And so she picks the team, and I think she's, I mean, she must have a kind of eccentric streak, because she assembles quite a...
People who really shouldn't be there.
Quite a crew. Yeah. But she knows what she's doing, and I think it betrays her in an interesting misfit weirdo, because it's a band of misfit weirdos, which I think is delightful and makes it really like...
And also family, because she sees that her daughter is going through some kind of connect. Like, I think it's the story of the mother with the teenage daughter around the world that is relatable, right? Like,
I don't know how to connect to my child.
I don't know how to get to my child. She's being incredibly. There's something going on. Go to your uncles. Like, so, but I think it's that you see. That her child is in duress, and she wants to figure this out, and she sees that it's directly
do anything, and she knows that the best people are, you know, an outsider from Monarch, but she knows to be the smartest person around about the issues, because Bernie is, yes, he's the conspiracy guy, but he's the conspiracy guy who's right. Yeah. And so she's taking a risk, but it's a smart one. Yeah. And he's a vet.
I didn't think she'd say it. She said it. I didn't think she'd say it. But also, you guys' relationship as well. Like, the history
it
between...
is in the story. It's that we knew each other from way back.
We knew each other at college.
Which we literally do.
We literally knew each other at college.
We literally were at college together.
And just you know, knows the right person to call when Kong has a toothache, which is a smart move, and then somehow invites me on the mission.
Yeah, somehow.
In case there's another toothache.
And then she entrusts us with her child, you know, because we're also learning, like, how to care for this family, this new family.
It's a weird family.
And that seems to be the through line of this movie about, like, how to find your family, how to find your roots, what family looks like. Doesn't always have to be conventional. We were talking about, like, each day going to work, like, just because sometimes we didn't know what the sets would look like until we got there. And so you go on and you're walking through these caverns, and you're seeing, like, the light. Remember when they poured the lights through? Oh my God, like, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like, so you are standing in a sense of wonder.
There was a lot of stuff that, I mean, we talk a lot about the CGI and a lot about, because obviously Godzilla and Kong, we're never seeing them, unfortunately, but everything else you are kind of seeing. But, you know, it's really happening.
The feathers, remember all the feathers? Like, you're walking.
Feathers in the jungle.
Feathers. There's a scene where there's a water. We go to these old, what would they be called?
Ruins.
The ruins. We go to the ruins, and there is a water element where it runs through all the ruins, and we're following it, and that was real. Like we're really following this water going through, like it
on a giant stage as well. They
giant
recreated this jungle with the ruins and running. I mean, we were running the full length of this enormous.
How the cameras would go in and out. I mean, that is a testimony to Adam. Like that is such Wingardian stuff. Like it's so him. And you're on this amusement park ride with you know your fellow castmates and friends, and it's like you are going through it because he's so excited about it. He's thought about it in such a way, and he is trying to unveil it to you the same way that he's unveiling it to us. And it's so incredible to see a filmmaker that is that much of a fan and is that excited every day about what he gets to showcase. So,
and also, like, I think that the truth about a lot of acting is that you feel what you want the audience to feel, right? So if the sort of overriding word of the thing the experience that you want an audience to have is fun, then we all know, even when we're playing distress, even when we're playing serious, we also know that if we're not having fun, they're not going to be having fun.
I think a sense of awe as well. Like I found that on most of the sets, and I think that's certainly part of Trapper's vibe. Is just like the awesome majesty of nature and the natural world. And
bit
you know that it is. That was. But you know, just definitely feeling that. And I think you know there's a sense of watching these movies, especially in something like IMAX in the biggest format possible, where it's just awesome. I'd definitely go Baby Kong.
Baby Kong,
Baby
without
Kong.
a doubt. Because reptiles are very tricky.
Tricky.
I'm more of a Baby Kong guy. Like, he can hold his bottle.
Yeah.
But weirdly, my daughter is super into the idea of Baby Godzilla. She talks about Baby
Really?
Godzilla. She's made up a whole Baby Godzilla character. She's like, that's much more interesting to her.
Okay.
Wow. I don't know if I could do a Baby Godzilla. That's just too much. Like, no. He's Kong all the way.
Kaylee.
Hey, I was gonna
Kaylee is saving humanity. I mean, without question.
all the way. I felt like even in the movie, my character feels safer with her. It's just like Kaylee without a doubt.
Even her adopted mother feels safe.
No, seriously, it's Kaylee, man. Yeah.
Definitely.
I'm definitely more Godzilla. And I'm just talking about thermostat, okay? Because like Godzilla likes to be cold, Godzilla, but then when Godzilla wants to be radioactive, they can be. I likes to isolate sometimes in a coliseum. I do that. You know what I mean? Like likes teamwork, but could go without it. You know what I mean?
Actually, the way you're describing everything, I suddenly relate to Godzilla.
Like,
more Godzilla.
Yeah,
I think that isolating in the Coliseum is really,
it's just what
it's a good place to.
And also, when I come into a
quiet
town, I usually try to destroy it. So, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the comparisons are plentiful for me. What about you, Dan?
I have to say Kong, I suppose. Just, you know,
to be different.
unwanted body hair. That's it.
And that's all you need.
That's all you need.
That's all you need.
Yeah.
That is.
I mean, my best memory was probably Brian's reaction to the Day Tree Forest every day.
I wasn't really a fan of the rainforest. Like it's beautiful. We get that. It's lots of oxygen. We get that as well. But the ride there, first of all, was dangerous because like okay, so you don't know who you are until you get an email from production that's about croc alerts, right? Like, not alligators, but croc alerts, right? And so the animation is literally just the top of a croc's head, and then, like, in big, bold letters, there's more than meets the eye. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And then you see this body underneath the water that is of this monstrous, crazy, like, reptile. And then when you're driving there, there's cliffs that are right there, like any wrong turn or twig.
Lots of signs. Don't walk crocodiles.
Also, what's crazy about it is that Australians are so unbothered by all of this. Like, they're just so unbothered. Like, so there's also an animal called a cassowary. There's a cassowary, which is a mixture between a velociraptor, a peacock, and an ostrich. And then it has claws that are the size of like that can rip you apart. And people thought this was the cutest thing in the world. As a matter of fact, one day we were leaving, my driver decided to stop for a cassowary crossing, right? Like there was cassowary crossing with their babies, and he rolled my window down. I was like, look at that, look at the baby, they're just babies. Look at that. And I'm like, I will kill you. Like, what are you doing? Like, so most of the reactions from Bernie in this movie are actually really me, because like it was terrifying. Like it was
gimpy plant.
Gimpy
There's a
plant.
tree that wants to kill you as well.
There's a tree
It's
that
not
wants
just animals.
It's nicknamed the suicide plant or something because it has these tiny little hairs in the leaves, and if it falls on you and it gets into your skin,
Even if you brush past it.
you would rather commit suicide than endure the pain.
It has 1,000 tiny little hooks. So if you brush past it, they hook into you, and then you go like this because you think you've touched something,
you're rubbing
then the
it
more
further
you
in.
rub it, the more it gets in, and the more it itches. Adrenalizing.
Punk rock, fun times like you've
Heavy
never seen
metal.
before.
family, connection,
Neon.
eggplant.
You know, in a lot of ways, this film's really about the origin of our world and the monsters' worlds. You know, we're gonna trace back, you know, where Kong's roots come from, and simultaneously we're kind of understanding the roots of human civilization as well through Gia's storyline. And so this film ends up being kind of an exploration of how the monsters got here, how the humans got here, and how to avoid sort of a mutual apocalypse between the two worlds. From the very beginning, my whole concept of this film was to not just show the audiences things and places that they'd never been before, but I wanted to stylistically take a whole new approach to these monster movies. I wanted this to be the first monster film where you actually get to fully realize and empathize with the monsters as a character. You know, when we did Godzilla vs. Kong, we started kind of flirting with the idea of having these sequences where the entire POV wasn't just through the human's eyes looking up at the monsters, but the monsters, specifically Kong especially, becoming the main protagonist of the film and having the film be seen through his perspective. You know, these MonsterVerse films aren't just about monsters. There's big sci-fi elements to it. You got anti-gravity vehicles, you got, you know, Journey to the Hollow Earth, and these like kind of fantastic realms. And so having a better understanding of how to approach that kind of stuff has been really cool. Coming into Godzilla vs. Kong, that was the fourth film in the MonsterVerse series, and so to a certain degree, you know, as a director, you feel a little bit like a visitor, you know, like this is a whole world that's been set up and evolved over the course of these films, and you know, it's your chance as a director to put your stamp on it and do your thing, and then potentially pass it along. So when it came to the opportunity to do the fifth film, and for me the second film that I've done, it was really like an exciting thing, because now not only am I just, you know, picking up where the last director left off, I'm able to continue sort of my vision and expand on it. So a lot of the colors, the tone, and even the approach to action and characters and the monsters themselves, you know, were really something that now I was able to continue forward and to have total authorship on, you know, myself. We didn't want this to just be a blue screen movie with a bunch of fantastic stuff happening behind them that would just be realized later. We wanted to get as much as possible real locations in it, and even shoot real locations for stuff that we would integrate into a Hollow Earth world, for instance. I mean, Hollow Earth is, you know, we shot plates in Iceland, in Hawaii, and even here in Australia. But, you know, this is a film that is traveling all over the world. We have stuff in Rome, Rio, and so forth. So we're getting all these different environments, and I think that that's really important nowadays. I mean, there's a reason why like James Bond movies, always go all over the world. There's sort of like this. There's just something to a film that has like sort of a real feeling of travel to it and reality within taking you to places that you've never been. And even though some of the places we're taking the audiences are totally fantasy, we want them to feel grounded in a way. And so utilizing real locations and those kind of things is a way of doing that. Daintree was a big challenge shooting there, but one that was definitely worth it. I mean, it was a couple hour hike every day, to get on set, and you had to go by ferry, and but you look at it on film, and it, some of the plants you see, some of that type of stuff are things that just don't exist anywhere else. And so because we wanted that ancient world feel to it, it was great to be able to almost literally go back in time at some of these locations, which have trees that have been around up to 2,000 years. I want to do a movie where kids feel like adults and adults feel like kids. I think that's the sort of secret sauce. When you make a movie like this, you're making it for giving the audience an experience, a really exciting adventure experience, and it's meant to be seen in the biggest screen possible. And so I'm hoping to sit there and eavesdrop and hopefully hear people, having a blast. Once you've seen Godzilla and Kong have like the most ultimate battle, like in Godzilla versus Kong, what's next, and the obvious answer is, the team up.
I mean, it's just so magical. I'm so honored to be part of the Monsterverse. I play the queen and the leader of the iwi people. We've met the iwis briefly in Kong Scout Island before, and this time we get to meet them at their home. I cannot wait to see the final film after it's done in its proper glory, how amazing these creatures will look like and how tiny and minute that we look like. It's gonna be so much fun. To be honest, sometimes I'm quite serious at work because I want to be focused and I want to do my work, and I sometimes need my space. But coming to the set, it's just impossible not to be sucked into this goofy energy between Rebecca and Bryan and Dan, and all of them are just so goofy. They're always singing, they're always making jokes.
I play Trapper, who is a vet, or a veterinarian, I guess, who specializes in looking after titan creatures, big creatures, like Kong, like Godzilla. Trapper's he's a cheeky chappy who probably had a bit of a dodgy start to life and eventually got things together and trained as a vet. He's fairly sort of happy-go-lucky. Nothing really phases him. He's fairly optimistic, bit of a joker. Yeah, it's very, very much a story about finding your roots, I think, and finding your origins, whether that's Kong or whether that's Gia, and I think there's a sort of a parallel story there that's really interesting to follow. She brings a lot of heart to this particular tale. Yeah, it's one of these sort of classic Hollywood movies, really, where you're getting to play with giant imaginary creatures and telling some jokes along the way. So I think it would be it's right up my street anyway, but it would definitely have been up the street of my 10-year-old self. There's some history with Dr. Andrews. We sort of get the sense that they certainly knew each other at college, and he grows increasingly fond of Bernie as well, and I think they learn that they have more in common than they initially thought. One of the things that I enjoyed about the last one of these was the sort of silent film that you get when you spend time with Kong, and the character that he was able to create with CGI, and the sort of the characterfulness of Kong really starting to come across. And I think you'll see a lot more of that in this. Without giving too much away, I think there's about a third of the movie that is really in that sort of space, and is really wonderful to watch. And I think when you have fun on set, very often that shines through on the screen, and especially with a movie like this, I think audiences want to go and have fun and be entertained and enjoy the experience, to go on the ride with you, and it really helps if you can have fun
doing that, because as I say, I think it transmits. Kaylee's incredible. To my shame, I've tried learning sign, and we've all had this app that's been teaching us, and I've been learning it slowly but surely. But I should apologise for not being better at it than I am. But yeah, her focus is incredible, and I think she does an amazing job on this. It's rare that you get a movie with such an ensemble in so many scenes, and working with Bryan and Kaylee and Rebecca, all of our sort of joint scenes, and Alex Ferns as well, just joining the gang. Just a lot of silliness and a lot of fun had on almost every scene that we've done together, really.
Yes, Bernie is back. Thank God. You're welcome. It's like I never left. It's like I literally put a cot up and put, I've been roasting marshmallows and hot dogs and waiting. I play a character named Bernie Hayes, who you saw in Godzilla vs. Kong, who used to work for Apex, which was the company and, how do you put it, the all-seeing eye of everything Godzilla. He unfortunately discovered the truth about Godzilla and had to leave Apex, but he is also the one that kind of it's Team Godzilla, wants to help save the world with the help of Godzilla, and basically he is the conspiracy theorist, and every conspiracy he's ever come up with is right. Bernie is always right. Bernie is, I don't know, he's incredibly lovable. He doesn't have much to lose because at this point, he's on his own, but he is a huge fan of the Titans. He is a huge supporter of the Titans. He loves to figure out what goes on, where they came from, why they exist, how they exist, and all these things. But he's, to me, the smartest one. Bernie is the one that knows exactly what's going on. He really wants to, in his own mind, I feel like he feels like he's a hero because of what he did with helping stop Mechagodzilla in the last film. We kind of find him in this film not as, I don't know how you put it, he hasn't reaped the benefits of what the fame of being someone who saved the world should have gotten. So he's still staying in his own place. He still has his podcast, but he's not getting the TED Talks. He's not getting the, speaker deals that other people get. He's still trying to figure out where he stands after, going through such a crazy, almost world-ending event, extinction-level event. And he is still a believer of what he believes about Hollow Earth, about Godzilla, about the Titans, and he's still right. Most importantly, everything that he thinks is still right. We are basically meeting after the huge versus battle between Godzilla and Kong. And what's happening now is that our young character, Gia, who we found, she's an Iwi from Skull Island, but we find her now, she's a little older, and she's starting to receive messages. And so what I find about this particular movie is that we're going back to the beginning of everything, right? We're trying to figure out the source of everything. So she needs to figure out where home is for her. I feel like she's getting a beckoning call from home to figure out where her origin is from. And that also leads us to figure out the origins of Kong and Godzilla as well. And when we're figuring all that out, we're discovering the origins of other things as well. We're discovering that there are more Titans. We're discovering that there is a village that our young character has emerged from. So this is kind of going back. This is kind of the origin story of how all of these Titans came to be. There's always going to be a battle. There's always going to be some kind of fight to the death, kind of who is the strongest, who is the smartest, who is the fastest. So we're meeting in that kind of conflict because I guess with most of us, when we try to figure out who we are and where we come from, there is a bit of a conflict, right? With what we thought was true is not really true. And I think the fans are gonna love this just because I know I've always wanted to know exactly where the origin of these stories come from. Why do they exist? How did they come to be? And I think that this movie is going to dive a little deeper into that. As an actor in the film, I'm seeing new stuff every day. Every day I'm just it's a brand new level. And that's the genius of Adam Wingard, honestly, our director. It makes a huge difference when your leader is a fan of, this kind of universe and is excited by the discoveries of what could possibly be, what could unfold. But I think the fans are going to be very excited. And what they should be even more excited about is that there's a lot of explosions. Explosions, what you're going to get the most of is explosions, sweat, screaming, bright lights. Like it's like a whole new thing. Like take Godzilla versus Kong and just like inject it with the most adrenaline you possibly can, and that's what this film is gonna be. It's great, like it's really fun, and a big part of that has to do with the cast. I mean, you know, the last film, Rebecca Hall and I didn't get a chance to pair up because she was Team Kong and I was Team Godzilla, so we had our own separate storylines. But this time, to watch the two of us get together, it's like a friendship that I knew I wanted but didn't know I needed. And so it's really great to watch the chemistry between Andrews and Bernie and how they both have survived the last feat between the Titans and how they were both very involved, and now they're actually making a choice to go. Like last time it felt like we had no choice. We had to make sure like the two of them wanted to fight and we had to figure out what that, but now we're like, there's so much empathy and care about these Titans, Godzilla and Kong. We really care about them very much. And so we're the ones who know the most about them. And you know, when you take her headstrongness and my incredibly, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say, he's a kamikaze mission, Bernie. Like he's a little bit all over the place, but the two of them really make a great pair. And then we bring back Gia, Kaylee, who is basically like our guide, you know, like she's the one that has she's the heartbeat of the story because she's so connected to Kong. If you want somebody who is going to have facts, who really knows exactly what he's talking about, who has studied this more than he should have, you know what I mean? Like who is so engaged and so involved, you go to Bernie Hayes, man. Like you want that guy. It's the one time that you want that crazy stalker fan to be on your side. Like you want that guy that is really like sitting there cheering on Godzilla left and right and being like, this is what goes on here. This is how you want that guy on your team. I think this time around, the audience can actually care more about, you know, the human element. Because look, we all come to these movies to see the monsters, right? Like we want to see the fights, we want to see the explosions, we want to see all of that. But I think what is really great about the MonsterVerse and what we're doing now is that you actually care about the people that care about the monsters, you know? Like you actually feel like you can follow their journey, which is mostly in part to the actors, you know? Like, I mean, honestly, the way that Rebecca and Dan have taken to Trapper and Andrews, you just want to follow them, you know? And I always want the audience to feel like I'm speaking for them, you know? I want Bernie to be like their voice as well, of like how he goes into situations. I mean, it's like getting on that roller coaster that's opening for the first day, right? And you get the front seat. It's like that. I think that's where Bernie lives, honestly. Like he's on a perpetual like theme park journey because he loves this so much. And look, Bryan, I'm a fanboy of this. Like, I am a huge fan of Godzilla and Kong, and like to honestly be a part of it it blows my mind every day that I get to come and play this way. I mean, every day that I walk on a soundstage or I see a set, I'm truly just like bursting with pride.
I played Dr. Eileen Andrews, and she was in the first Godzilla vs. Kong movie, and she works at Monarch. In this movie, she's sort of in a much more senior position at Monarch. She's in charge of all things Kong related. She's also the character Gia's adopted mother. The story essentially centers on the idea that there is some sort of interference or signal emitting from somewhere that Gia is picking up on. And my job, both Eileen Andrews' job, both at Monarch and as her mother, is really to work out what it is and see if it's coming from something sinister or complicated. And so then the adventure begins. In this movie, there has been an evolution of Dr. Andrews and Gia. I mean, time has gone by. She is now a teenager. And I think that you get to see some of the sort of familiar domestic dynamics between a mother and teenage daughter, you know. It's definitely that moment when a child is sort of, you know, flirting with her independence in a much more extreme way, and the mother is sort of like wondering about how much freedom they should give them versus how many boundaries they should give them. But of course, in this world, that's to do with monsters and saving the world, so it's a little bit different, but basically the same as every mother and daughter. And I think that, I think they've both moved on. She is definitely questioning her identity and who she is and how she fits into the world, and I think Eileen Andrews is trying to help support that and give her all the tools to be free and find that out, and whilst also being a bit worried about losing her, and in the way that any mother is. And I think that's really one of the sort of core sort of metaphors in the story, actually, is that relationship happening. I think it's nice in this movie that there is a sense that I was really happy to capitalize on, that Andrews has a deep respect for Bernie Hayes. Like, yes, he's a eccentric podcaster and with the conspiracy theories and all the rest of it, but also he was a part of that crazy journey that she was on that saved the world. And he did some extraordinary things, and he has smarts about an area of expertise that she's also a part of. So, and I think, there's a sense also that, why doesn't he come and be part of it again? And so she is also, at a certain point in this movie, she is desperate for answers. And I think she has the wisdom to recognize someone who thinks outside the box might be able to see what everyone else isn't. So she goes to Bernie Hayes and she, says, I respect you, I think you're great, come and help me. Dr. Andrews is definitely more senior in Monarch this time. She's got more confidence, I'd say. I think she's a bit more boss these days. She's giving TED Talks and writing books, and she's on the cover of National Geographic and all that kind of thing, which is fun. It's fun to see her being successful and influential in the world, and sort of screaming at senators on the phone about how to deal with Hollow Earth and things. That's fun. I really had a very enjoyable time on the first movie, and I haven't had a lot of experience of sort of revisiting a world that I sort of played in before, and it's a really fun experience to come back to something, because there is an element of almost nostalgia, because you sort of remember the things that you enjoyed about the last one, but you also have opportunities to build on it and expand your understanding of the world, and also just really sort of dig down on character choices that maybe were just a sketch in the first one, and now you get to fully sort of explore in this world.
I think one of my secret weapons as a director is I made a lot of mental notes when I was a kid of what I wanted to see and experience in movies if I was ever given a chance to direct. And one of the things that I was really focused on as a kid was the type of Godzilla films that I always wanted to see. I just love the sequences where the monsters are interacting with each other. I loved all the little allegiances they have. I like the friendships, like Mothra and Godzilla have their sort of thing, and Anguirus and Godzilla, they have their own little understandings. And so as a filmmaker, I wanted to really kind of fulfill the wishes that I kind of created in myself when I was 10, when I watched these movies, because I just know that if I felt this way as a kid, that there's lots of kids now that feel the same. And so, even though this is a movie that's meant to be enjoyed, for adults and children, if you're adult, hopefully the movie makes you feel like a kid, and if you're a kid, hopefully the movie makes you feel like an adult. That's the sweet spot, and that's what I'm trying to hit. Well, there's quite a bit different in this Godzilla. I mean, Godzilla has to go through an entire evolutionary process to kind of prepare himself for this battle. And in a lot of ways, I think the concept of characters evolving and kind of prepping for a major conflict and having to change themselves in order to adapt to be able to take on a formidable adversary is kind of inspired by the Shaw Brothers films of the 70s, especially, some of the 80s ones as well. I took a lot of inspiration from that kind of martial arts structure where, hero fights villain, is defeated and has to pull himself together and learn new talents and abilities in order to take him down. Like Clan of the White Lotus is one of my favorite movies of all time, and that movie really features that kind of vibe really strongly. So Godzilla, it was important to me that we give him a new look for this film, because it's a fun thing as a Godzilla fan to see different iterations of him through the years, but I didn't want that to just be a random thing, to me, it is fun that we're going to sell toys about this movie, but that's not what we're creating these things for. So I wanted it to be story driven, and so the concept of Godzilla evolving was something that was always a major thrust of the story. Pink's my favorite color, so naturally it kind of went in that direction. But there's a story reason why he actually goes, his energy goes pink in this movie, so that's exciting. With Kong's always a character that interfaces with the humans. He's always got, the human story is always very tightly intertwined with Kong's story in pretty much every past iteration up till now. And so the concept of evolving Kong using, with his interface with the humans, with this mechanized arm and stuff, was something that was, again, another one of the concepts that were developed right out the gate. It's like, if we can make a movie that's crazy enough to justify Kong having a giant mechanical arm, then we've accomplished a lot here. And so that's what I love about the MonsterVerse too. It started out as 2014 Godzilla, very grounded, all the technology is very grounded, and slowly, similar in the way that the Showa era films of Godzilla, amped things up and went into a more exciting, colorful sci-fi psychedelic direction. That's sort of what we're doing now too. Godzilla over the years has had lots of main nemesis villains, like Destroya and Ghidorah, but Kong has never had a main villain, and so that's where Scar King comes in. He's very much the anti-Kong, and what's exciting about Scar King as a villain is that he's not a straightforward monster. Like, in other words, a lot of the monsters battle each other based on their sort of animal instincts that they have. The Scar King's closer to a human in the sense that his intentions are evil, and normally these monsters, for better or worse, you can't necessarily say their intentions are bad. They're just in conflict with planet Earth or Godzilla himself. In this case, the Scar King's actually a bad guy, and so in that sense, he's kind of cool too, because he's sort of continuing the legacy that these films always have. There's always an environmental edge. There's always a man versus nature edge, and instead of having to literally have man conflicting with the monsters, the Scar King is actually a surrogate for man, and we're able to say all those things, but in a 300-foot tall package. Suko's the heart of the film. We learn more about Kong through Suko than we do even, from Kong doing anything else. I think he's sort of a reflection of the way probably Kong was when he was young himself, and I think on the surface, Suko comes off like this cute little, almost Baby Yoda thing, but like the way I would describe him is, he's like Baby Yoda if Baby Yoda would eat the flesh off of your face. It's he's a little scrapper, he's a survivor, and there's a lot of complexity with him as a character, and he's the heart and soul of the movie though. This is a film that's meant to be seen on the biggest screen possible. We designed it, with, all the major effect sequences are shot in 1:90 IMAX aspect ratio. And so it's almost an hour's worth of footage, if you see it on the big screen. Scale is always the main thing. I mean, these movies, there's nothing bigger, you don't have characters that are this big in any other film, and it's really a fun, thing to play with. And, there's only so many ways you can create a giant 300-foot monster, and most of that is going to require full CG animation, and so a lot of this film, in some ways, as a filmmaker myself, I have to approach it as though I am making a hyper-realistic animated movie. With that said, we still have, a fantastic story with our human cast, and it's very important where we can to put them in real locations because like I said, so much of the film has to be done in CG. When we don't, it's really important to try to find ways to ground it. And so we travel all over the world, and we've gone to some really interesting, dense, out there locations in the rainforest, like in Daintree, for instance. One of our main locations, we shot some jungle footage out there. It wasn't easy to get to, a couple hours from the hotel. You had to take a ferry over to this one part just to get to the location itself. But it was all worth it because, anywhere we didn't have to, use blue screen and stuff, it was important to take advantage of that. As an icon, Godzilla and King Kong has just persevered for so many years, and there's been so many incarnations of those characters. I think the fact that they're just not like super overexposed. It still takes, quite a few years to make one of these movies because of the complexity of the special effects. So it kind of forces a spacing of the films, and I think that actually helps out a lot. I think that people need a break from things to get excited about them. And I think the MonsterVerse films, they've always had a different approach. I mean, this is only the first time that there's been a director doing two in a row, but up until now, every director sort of had their own take and their own style that they brought to it. And I would say even the style I brought to this one's very different than the one I brought in Godzilla vs. Kong. And so I think that's kind of important in terms of keeping the whole series fresh, is there's always this new stylistic approach to the characters, and it's an exciting time to be a monster fan. I just want audiences to be able to, again, like I think the best way I can describe it is I want kids to feel like adults, and I want adults to feel like kids. I mean, that's sort of like my main focus when creating these. Is I'm the only audience I truly can relate to is myself, and the version of myself that I'm making this movie for is the inner 10-year-old in me. Now, the 10-year-old in me didn't necessarily want a kids movie either. Like when you're a 10-year-old, you don't, like when something's made too much for kids, you don't like it. I mean, as a 10-year-old, I liked Godzilla movies, but I also liked the Terminator films and Aliens and movies I shouldn't have been watching when I was 10. And so, like that's the line that we're trying to ride for me, is I want to make something that can really allow kids to interface their imagination onto and all that stuff, but like it's not pandering to them either, on either end of it. I don't want adults to feel like they're watching a kids movie, because it's not, but that's sort of the line. I think that's like the greatest advantage of having a character like Kong, is he's so human in his own ways, and so I think there's a lot of important lessons in terms of the emotional journey Kong's going through, and that's reflected in the human journey as well. Gia is going through a period of trying to figure out her place in the world and the people that she can relate to, and Kong's going through exactly the same thing on his own scale, in Hollow Earth even. And so that's what's kind of interesting, is that the human story in these films, I think, are most effective when they don't always have to be butted up against the monsters, but thematically they need to reflect each other. And like you said, this film has a lot of really great messages about finding your place in the world, and and about overcoming loneliness and those kind of things.
It feels great to be back for the second movie. My role is going to show such a great part in this movie. I think in the beginning of the movie, she's struggling a little bit, where she belongs, where her home is. She feels a little lost. Something feels out of her control. And then she makes that connection with herself, and when she finds her people. I don't remember, but I remember Kong being the same exact way with Gia. He feels lost as well, but he's trying to find where he's from and where his people are, and he's trying to find his family. Because they both have the same personal experiences. They both need someone to find, and they're both looking for that connection. I think because she has meaning in the end of her journey. Her mom knows who she is, and she knows who she is. She knows that she is the only person that can bring that connection with these two worlds together, and she knows she has to do it. So she has to stay brave for that reason. And she just does it. Oh gosh, nature was so beautiful there. The weather was perfect, the trees, the nature was so great. Acting there was just probably my favorite part in general, but I loved running around with the cast, and that's probably one of my favorite memories. When going back, I felt very confident because Adam was gonna be there. So I knew that he would help me through any acting journey I had. You know, if he had a vision, he would tell me exactly what he wanted and he would make it so clear. And so I just followed and acted according to what Adam wanted. I think Baby Kong. Because I think that I wouldn't be sure how to take care of Godzilla. I don't know how to communicate with him, but yeah, probably that. I think the most fun part was traveling, seeing new places and different things that I've never been to before. That was such a great new experience for me. I think I would say it's an amazing, heartwarming journey, and I think that they would connect with the movie as well. I think the emoji with the eyeglasses, and probably the monkey emoji, and the lizard emoji.
When we start this film, following from the end of Godzilla vs. Kong, Kong is in Hollow Earth. He's trying to figure out his place there, but he is also essentially almost like the guardian of Hollow Earth. Godzilla, on the other hand, patrols the surface. And we establish that there's a truce. As long as Godzilla stays on the surface and Kong stays down below, all's okay. If Kong comes up on the surface, Godzilla is not going to be happy, and vice versa, Godzilla coming down to Hollow Earth. However, as the film progresses, we discover that something's up with Godzilla. He's preparing himself for something. There is some imbalance in the world that we sense Godzilla is preparing himself to go up against. And Kong, through his journey, ends up coming up against that imbalance very quickly and has to go and get Godzilla to help him fight that imbalance, but has to first get past the animosity that the two of them have so they can get to a place where they can work together and fight this threat. And now, with this film, being able to evolve that with Adam Wingard, who had a really fun vision for how to bring both characters into the same film with Godzilla vs. Kong, we've been now able to evolve that, diving into some of the different elements that he first introduced in Godzilla vs. Kong, but also continue with that same fun tone, big adventure, big cinematic events with these two characters coming together. In this film, we take Gia's journey even further. Gia is the last of the Iwi people, or at least as far as we know, she's the last of the Iwi people who were lost in a tragic event on Skull Island. And she was adopted by Dr. Andrews, Rebecca Hall's character. And in this film, Gia goes deeper into discovering who she is. In at the top of the film, she's struggling a little bit. She's trying to find her place in the world. There are things happening to her that she doesn't quite understand. And through the film, on a journey with Dr. Andrews, Rebecca Hall's character, Bernie, who Bryan Tyree plays, and Trapper, who's a new character who Dan Stevens plays, they go into Hollow Earth to try and discover what's happening to Gia, and through that discover much more about herself, about her and her people. You know, one of the central themes of this film, both for the human characters, but also in a way for the titular characters, the creature characters, is that family is where you find it, family is what you make of it. Through the film, both Gia and Kong on some level go through a journey of discovery and finding who their families are. We were incredibly fortunate to find Kaylee Hoddle and to work with her in Godzilla vs. Kong as Gia. She's a young deaf actress. She's extraordinarily talented. Our casting director, Sarah Finn, first found her, and when Adam first met with her, we all knew immediately that she was our Gia. There is a new character in this film called Trapper, who's played by Dan Stevens, who is an incredibly fun, he's a monarch creature veterinarian, like a cryptozoologist, who studies the creatures, works with the creatures, looks after the creatures. There's some fun stuff where Kong needs some help in this film, and Trapper's able to step up and bring a new expertise that we haven't yet seen from Monarch. You know, I'm happy to say that Adam Wingard has brought some really fresh, big, fun visual energy into Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. Tonally, the movie is a lot of fun, but yet there are these big, massive worlds we get to explore with these two characters of Godzilla and King Kong, and we really see more of the movie through their perspectives than we have before. One of the really fun things in Godzilla vs. Kong was getting to bring both characters into the same MonsterVerse film for the first time, and we really got to see them go mano a mano against each other, the strengths and the weaknesses of each as they fought. In this film, Godzilla x Kong, they come together again, but have to work together against a greater threat. And that, of course, brings its own challenges. It doesn't go well at first. There ends up being, of course, some big fight sequences between them. But as they go forward and confront an even greater threat, they work together in a way that's really satisfying, where we get to see them work together against a common foe, along with some other surprises who come into the film as well. Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire is a big, fun popcorn movie with larger-than-life characters, both monster and human. It's a really fun ride where we go to places we haven't seen before. We go into parts of Hollow Earth that are just extraordinary and colorful and really fun and welcoming. And of course, there's danger and action and destruction as there are in these movies, but it's got a really fun, good-natured sensibility to it. Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire is a big, fun, cinematic adventure. It's a perfect movie for a family. It's got something for everybody. We've got big set pieces with great monster action, but we've also got an incredible emotional journey about a little girl who's connecting with her lost people, with King Kong, who discovers that he's not the last of his kind, that there are others like him, including a young ape named Suko, who we think audiences are really going to connect to, and of course Godzilla, who is maintaining a balance and protecting us.